Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It is very important for peaceful householder life that a woman follow the vow of her husband. Any disagreement with the husband's vow will disrupt family life. In this regard, Chanakya Pandit gives a very valuable instruction. Dampatyo kalaho nasti tatra shri swayamagata. When there are no fights between husband and wife, the goddess of fortune automatically comes to the home. A woman's education should be conducted along the lines indicated in this verse. The basic principle for a chaste woman is to be always favorably disposed towards her husband. In Bhagavad Gita 140 it is said, Strishu dushtasu vashnaya jayate vanasankara. If the women are polluted, there will be vanasankara population. In modern terms, the vanasankara are the hippies who do not follow any regulative injunctions. Another explanation is that when the population is vanasankara, no one can know who is on what platform. The varnashram system scientifically divides society into 4 varnas and 4 ashrams. But in Varnasankara society there are no such distinctions, and no one can know who is who. In such a society, no one can distinguish between a Brahmin, a Kshatriya, a Vaishya, and a Shudra. For peace and happiness in the material world, the Varnashram institution must be introduced. The symptoms of one's activities must be defined, and one must be educated accordingly. Then spiritual advancement will automatically be possible. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So now I can understand why they asked me to do this verse today. Since I've been doing some research and writing on this topic, so this verse actually describes, in a nutshell, the religious principles for women, for married women. The 4 principles. To render service to the husband, to be always favorably disposed towards the husband, to be equally well disposed towards the husband's relatives and friends, and to follow the vows of the husband. So these are the 4 principles that are guidelines for married women to follow. Nowadays, of course, some people may consider these to be old-fashioned and out of date, because in modern society these principles are not widely recognized. And even in our society we are influenced by the outside world, by the society that we live in. And it's not so easy to follow these principles perfectly in the way that they were followed in Vedic society. But actually, because these principles are from the Vedic scripture, and they are part of all the Varnashram principles, this whole chapter is a description of the duties according to Varna and Ashram for each class and each section of people in the society. And because they are here in the Vedas, although they are not followed so much in present society, but they are always valid. And they are always meant to be followed as far as possible, Of course, according to time, place and circumstance, details may have to be adjusted. But the basic principles are always valid because they are given for human beings, and they're based on human psychology, because the basic human psychology is something that never changes. It's always the same. It's not that now, because we're living in the 21st century, so we're different, and we should live in a different way, and we should all be equal, and because we've seen that it doesn't work anyway. There's so much dissolution in modern society. There's so much dissolution in family life, so many divorce, so many children suffering from this phenomenon. And the only way that can be counteracted is by finding these Vedic principles, by sticking to these Vedic principles and trying to understand them, keeping faith in them, and following them as far as we can. As long as we have faith in them, even if we can't follow them perfectly, even though we can't be perfect people, even though we are conditioned souls and this is Kali Yuga, but as long as we keep faith in these principles and try and aspire to follow them and follow them as far as we can, then we can make spiritual advancement, and Krishna will protect us. And it's not okay. In one sense, we could say that a Vaishnav is transcendental to Varnashram, and this is true. Pure devotional service is transcendental to Varnashram, but at the same time, we shouldn't claim to be pure devotees, because if we try and claim to be we shouldn't even claim to be Vaishnavas, and to say that we're transcendental, this is actually impudence. So because the devotee, because we know that we're conditioned souls, so we should always respect and follow the principles of Varna and Ashram according to the Varna and Ashram that we're situated in. And even for the liberated souls, they also follow Varnashram in order to set an example for others. So that's why Varnashram principles, as long as we have a material body, principles of Varna and Ashram should never be given up. Because they are given in the Vedic scriptures, and they are given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are given by Lord Narayan. And even Krishna himself, when he came to this earth, he followed these principles. And he taught these principles. Because even for chanting, it's not that we can just chant Hare Krishna and then actually denigrate any part of the Vedic scriptures, any principle that's given in the Vedic scriptures. If we dismiss it, then that's actually an offense to the Vedic scriptures, which means it's an offense to the holy name. Because one of the 10 offenses is to blaspheme or denigrate the Vedic scriptures, or any book that is following in that line. And so if we have to be very careful, because if we do that, even if there's one thing that we don't agree with, then that could be affect our chanting. So it's not a question of agreeing or not agreeing, it's just a question of having faith. The faith is very important, then trying to understand. So even if there's something we don't agree with, then it must be that we don't understand it. So then we have to try to understand it. But the faith must always be there, because these Vedic scriptures are the sacred truth. They're coming from the Supreme Lord himself. So these principles are specifically for women. They are for a woman. The principles are all in relation to the husband. So to serve the husband and to follow the husband. These. The only thing that makes it difficult for us to follow these is the false ego, because just as all of us as conditioned souls, we find it difficult to surrender. The natural tendency of the conditioned soul of the false ego is that we don't want to surrender to anyone. We want to be independent. We want to be free. So we're always struggling to surrender to Krishna. So in the same way, for those of us who are conditioned souls in the bodies of women, it's the same difficulty that we don't want to surrender to the husband. We'll think, well, why do I have to surrender to a man just because I'm a woman? And why is he better than me? What makes him better than me? I'm just as good as him. This is the natural tendency of the conditioned soul, to think like this. But these principles are sacred, and if we try to follow them, then we'll see that things fit into place. Those women who actually stick to these principles and try to follow them, they'll be able to traverse any problems and difficulties in relationships, in Grihastha ashram. So this is given specifically for women. So whenever women have any problem in Grihastha ashram, if they dive into this Bhagavatam and read these verses, try to understand them and try to follow them, then they will be protected. The relationship will be protected, the ashram will be protected, and they'll become happy and peaceful. And that's why because I experienced this for myself, that's why I decided to write a book on this subject to help, because there's so much problem these days in marriage and family life. So in order to help protect our society, because even in ISKCON, the vast majority of the devotees are in Grihastha ashram, in family life, or they will be at some point in their lives. And because there isn't very much teaching or training on this topic, and there has been, we don't have a very good track record as a society. So that's why I did the research. I produced this book to try to help in this situation, because the Grihastha ashram is like the basis, social and economic basis of the society. And if the Grihastha ashram is strong, then the whole society can flourish. So it's very important that even for those of us, whether we're married or not married, that we try to understand and propagate these principles for the benefit of society in general, to educate people on how to live peacefully in Grihastha ashram. So in fact, there's one chapter of the book which is called Patni Dharma, or Duties for Married Women, and I've actually based the whole chapter on this verse because these are the principles. So I've actually, all the material in here is coming from Srila Prabhupada's books and other Vedic scriptures and works of a few other acharyas like Bhaktivinoda Thakur especially. And so for each part of this verse, I've elaborated further and taken further quotes, so I can just give you a few of these. Like, for example, there's it says here in the word-for-word translation, Pati Devanam means who have accepted their husbands as worshipable. So some people may question this, that why should the husband be worshipable? We worship Krishna, we worship the spiritual master. But the husband, if he's not a liberated soul, then why should we worship him if he's a conditioned soul? But actually the husband is like a representative of God for the wife, and that's why he's supposed to be worshipped. So this is explained in another verse. That according to Vedic teachings, the husband is said to be the supreme demigod for a woman. And that's a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam 6:18, 33-4, says, a husband is the supreme demigod for a woman. The supreme personality of Godhead, Lord Vasudeva, the husband of the goddess of fortune, is situated in everyone's heart and is worshipped through the various names and forms of the demigods by fruitive workers. Similarly, a husband represents the Lord as the object of worship for a woman. So demigods are, people who worship demigods are actually worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead through those demigods. That's, Krishna says that in the Bhagavad Gita, that one who worships the demigods is actually, the benefits that is receiving from the demigods are bestowed by Krishna. So in the same way that women who serve their husbands, they can worship the Supreme Lord through the media of their husbands. And that's mentioned in the purport of that same verse from the 6th canto. Srila Prabhupada says that if women who are usually very much attached to their husbands worship their husbands as representatives of Vasudeva, the women benefit. In India, a husband is still called Pati Guru, the husband's spiritual master. If husband and wife are attached to one another for advancement in Krishna consciousness, their relationship of cooperation is very effective for such advancement. And some people may question that why is the husband referred to as a demigod? Why, if he's an ordinary person, then why should he be worshipped as a demigod? And in answer to this, there's another purport of Srila Prabhupada in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 8, Chapter 5, verse 22, where he says, the devotees are all demigods. Anyone who is a devotee of Lord Krishna is called a Deva. Lord Krishna is very much pleased with his devotees, even if they are not on the topmost stage of devotional service. Even on the lower stages of devotional service, one is transcendental, and if one continues with devotional service, he continues to be a Deva or Sura. If one continues in this way, Krishna will always be pleased with him and will give him all instructions so that he may very easily return home back to Godhead. So this is the culture of respect. Although a devotee, a husband may not consider himself to be a demigod, but it's part of the culture of respect. Just like in the Vedic culture, the children are taught to serve the parents, the disciple serves the guru, the Brahmins, they are served by the society. The king is considered to be a representative of God. Like that, so in married life also, the wife serves the husband as a representative of God. And if she does in that way, then he will become empowered to represent God. So as long as he is a devotee, then he is qualified to be a husband. And just like in the Padma Purana, Lord Shiva says, Aradhananam Sarvesham, that verse, that of all types of worship, worship of Lord Vishnu is best. But better than worship of Lord Vishnu is the worship of his devotee, the Vaishnava. So we all know this principle that by serving devotees we can serve Krishna. So the same thing holds true in married life, that by serving each other as devotees, Krishna becomes pleased. Actually, Krishna becomes more pleased when we serve his devotees than when we serve him directly. And but the worshipping, it doesn't mean that the wife should be offering arti to the husband. She can worship the husband by cooking for him. That is also mentioned. Again, that's in the 6th canto, 6:19-17. Say, this is the verse itself, says that accepting her husband as the representative of the Supreme Person, a wife should worship him with unalloyed devotion by offering him prasad. The husband, being very pleased with his wife, should engage himself in the affairs of his family. So it's a very simple, the wife cooks for her husband, offers him prasad, and that's how she can please him. That's how she serves him and worships him. And that actually nourishes their relationship. It nourishes a spiritual relationship. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that the family relationship of husband and wife should be established spiritually according to the process mentioned above. So the process, which is to cook, serve prasadam, share prasadam, that establishes a spiritual relationship. That's all said there in the Nectar of Instruction, the 6 types of loving exchanges between devotees. Sadvidam Priti Lakshanam. So one of these, of those 6, 2 of those 6 is offering prasad and accepting prasad. So this is one of the loving relationships that goes on between all devotees, between all people. So that's very much a core to Grihastha life. And there are many, many other instructions. Which actually are in the following verses, but those will be for next week. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Radha Gokulananda ki jai, Sitaram Lakshmana Hanuman ki jai, Shri Gonitai ki jai. There's so many things to be said that I don't really know where to stop. But relationship is, of course, the key. principle, the key factor. Spiritual life is all about relationships. For Mayavadis, spiritual life is about negating all relationships, even the relationship with God. But devotional life is the opposite. It's all about relationships, developing relationship with Krishna by developing relationships with devotees. So all relationships in this world are practice for our spiritual relationship with Krishna, that which in order to go back to Him, we have to cultivate everything that we're doing in Krishna consciousness is to develop our relationship with Krishna, to become closer to Krishna, to develop our love for Him. And according to the people that Krishna places us together with, by developing loving relationships with them, we can develop our loving relationship with Krishna. And vice versa, by developing our relationship with Krishna, then we develop loving relationships with them, which because we are conditioned, then some material attachment may be there. But relationships should never be given up because of material attachment. As long as they are authorized relationships, then by following spiritual principles and at the same time cultivating those relationships, we can also spiritualize those relationships and connect them with Krishna. Because the most important principle of any relationship, and especially in Grihastha ashram, is to keep Krishna always there, present, at the center of life, and to develop relationships in connection with Him, under His protection, under His shelter. And these principles are natural for a spirit soul in the human body. These principles are natural according to the particular psychophysical nature of men and women. They're natural to be followed. There are also principles to be followed for married men. And everything is described in these books. And it's just like, it's a similar principle like in this, it's described in Rupa Goswami in the Nectar of Devotion, about devotional service. We all know there's sadhana bhakti and there's raganuga bhakti. So as conditioned souls, we follow sadhana bhakti, we follow rules and regulations. But then as we advance in Krishna consciousness, then our service becomes more spontaneous. We develop a taste for that service. And so the similar principle is there in any relationship. And even in this relationship that's being discussed here between husband and wife, that we follow these principles. But then, as the relationship matures, it becomes more spontaneous, it becomes natural. And then these principles are just naturally followed without even any endeavor. They're there, they're part of it, because they are natural. So, there's a lot more I could say, but since there may be some questions,